You're watching Public Comment, Sean O'Connor's video diary vlog focusing on politics, culture, and self. I still don't know what the perfect greeting is to begin these videos. Do I want to say hi? Or hello? Or hey y'all? Or how are you? Or sup? Or what's happening? How do you do? I just don't know what the right introduction is yet. You see, I do like to have a reason for everything. So there should be a reason why I begin one way as opposed to another. I thought about saying, hola, ¿cómo estás? Or ciao. But then I thought, well, I don't want to give anyone the impression that this video is not in English and have them leave before it even really starts. So I decided against that. Well, there was a tornado warning last night, roughly between 5:30 and 6 o'clock p.m. It was a very rare thing for New Jersey, actually. When I was in high school, a tornado hit the school while we were in class. I was in English class, but I don't really remember that day particularly well. You see, I've managed to block out most of my high school memories. I had a dream last night of someone I went to middle school with. In the dream, he pretended to be nice to me for a while, but then he asked me if I still hated him. The dream is actually coming back to me now, more so than when I was jotting down my notes. In this dream, it was a very strange dream, I was in a dancing show, and I was one of the important dancers in the show, and that's about the limit of what I remember. I just remember like a lot riding on my dance performance, and it was some kind of national competition. Anyway, so I dreamt of this guy that I'd gone to middle school with, and he says in the dream, he asks if I still hate him, and he mentions I'd posted these blogs or something online about how much I hated him or insulted him or something. And so I said to him, oh, I was just so stupid in those days, I didn't mean it, I'm sorry about that. And in this dream, he doesn't forgive me. And so he starts insulting me. I forget exactly what it is he says. Anyway, the insults don't bother me in the dream. I mean, in general, in life, insults, they don't bother me on a personal level. That is to say, you could insult me and I don't care so much. I mean, it doesn't, I don't think it is a helpful thing. But I don't let it get to me, though I still see it as a destructive way of being, and I definitely don't have tolerance for when someone insults another person. That is a quick way to watch me experience anger. But yeah, I tend to view the desire to insult someone, I view that as someone else's anger issue, their negativity, their anxiety, etc. I just see it as, not constructive. By that I mean, like if you're constructive, you show somebody you care about his or her well-being. You show that you want to know more about what this person's goals are. You want to offer some kind of feedback that could be of help, usefulness, etc. Anyway, the tornado watch, it made me really mildly nervous, so I did call my mother and Ashley. I wanted to make sure they were okay. I was worried about them. It was exceptionally dark out when we looked through the window at the tutoring center, and it was funny, the one tutor remarked how there was no lightning, and then wouldn't you know it, lightning struck. And I said something to the effect of, for believers in God out there, maybe this is a sign that God is listening. I don't remember it actually even being that dark during a thunderstorm. Not in a long time. Not in a few years, though. Maybe I've just not paid attention. Last summer, I really didn't pay attention to the weather very well. I was in a bad way last summer. Extreme panic disorder, like at its worst. Panic attack after panic attack after panic attack. And I'm not just talking like every few days, but I'm talking about like hour after hour of panic attack symptoms. Thinking that, I'm going to die, experiencing vertigo, sweaty palms, racing heart, all of these really awful things, the shaking hands. It was just very bad. Plus the whole, I have esophoria it's an eye condition, which means that I can only my eyes are very sensitive to visual stimuli. It takes them about twice as much energy to focus on something because they sort of have an inherently cross-eyed way of being. So my eyes were bugging out all the time last summer. And one of the worst symptoms was, it's called visual vertigo. I mean, it's essentially vertigo, but they call it visual vertigo, as opposed to like the kind of vertigo that might be caused by some kind of like ear-related issue. So at the time, though, I didn't know about the esophoria yet, though I was theorizing that was possibly what was going on with me. Some kind of, I think at the time I thought it was hyperphoria, I think was my theory. I did a lot of research in the midst of my panic attacks and my eye bug outs to try to figure out what the hell was wrong with me. It was also, that was right, the Helsinki conference, where Trump sort of blatantly demonstrated his collusion with President Putin of Russia. That scared the hell out of me. And at the time, not being able to manage my anxiety as it was and all the stress I was taking these summer classes that are like high intensity, like 3 to 5 week classes. I just could not manage that psychological stress at the time. I mean, still, when we really think about where we are politically, though I'm not, knock on wood, as the expression goes, not having really panic attacks about it, and I'm able to be I have a good sort of sense of equilibrium these days and poise. I'm still troubled. I still think if Trump manages to advance with his agenda and his presidency, move forward without any kind of impeachment and prosecution, I do believe damage will have been done to this country. And I think if the Republicans maintain their Trumpian ways, that ideology of go after people with insults, lies, try to get away with crimes, conspire with foreign governments, trying to cheat our democratic elections, do things to obstruct federal investigations, law enforcement, the damage is done. So that's something there is an emotional experience to that reality, and I'm glad that I don't have, again, knock on wood, panic attacks over that, but I do experience profound disappointment and sadness to see that that's the kind of political culture that we live in, and I don't want that for us. I don't want that for children I would hope to have in the future. I would like to live in a better world than that. Last night, before bed, I was listening to MSNBC's Brian Williams, and I was listening to him with his panel. They were discussing Robert Mueller's statement. And so that gave me an opportunity to listen to Mueller's statement for a second time. And I've got to tell you, what stood out was his closing remark. I want to give you exactly what he said here because, yeah, it really stands out. He said this, quote, "And I will close by reiterating the central allegation of our indictments, that there were multiple systematic efforts to interfere in our election. And that allegation deserves the attention of every American." By the way, I will link you to the transcript, but I got it from the New York Times if you're wondering what my source was. Brian Williams describes that as chilling, and I agree with Brian Williams. Specifically, the reason I found that concluding remark so chilling is because, keeping in mind, Mueller says extremely little in general. One might even argue he understates things. So when he says that the quote, when he says, quote, "multiple systematic efforts to interfere with our elections deserves the attention of every American," that's a powerful assertion coming from him. Moreover, I think about what it means to say something deserves the attention of every American. Remember, all I was telling you about yesterday, the whole niche thing, and everybody paying attention only to things that are relevant in their niche. But Mueller essentially says that the attacks on our elections are of universal concern in America, and that we should all care. That it should be a topic of every one of us, a topic every one of us is contemplating and discussing. And it makes me wonder how few things, or how many things there are out there that every American thinks about and talks about. Those things which bind us all together, as opposed to those things which divide us within our communities, our niche communities. And speaking of community and all of that, I'm persisting in my desire to improve my interactions with other folks on social media. Facebook and Instagram, they're a lot easier for me when it comes to getting conversations going, being a part of them. Right, in contrast, Twitter, I just feel like I'm talking to myself, shouting out into the universe, and nobody listens, knows, or cares, etc. I've also opened Reddit and Tumblr accounts, but it occurs to me I really know nothing about these social media platforms, and to be honest, I do actually find it a touch intimidating. Specifically with Twitter, and well, all three of them, there's just this intense visual stimulation for me. I want to say maybe even overstimulation. Again, I told you about my eyes, they're sort of hypersensitive. So when all this stuff, like a mad swarm of bees or a mad flock of birds coming at me, it has an almost a dizzying effect, to be honest. I mean, even with my glasses, even when I'm at the grocery store, I could still get dizzy. This feeling, with so many people, so many food and drink items jumping at me. Anyway, I do realize so many things in life are about time, investment, practice, exploration, experimentation, commitment to learning, etc. I realize perhaps we can't all have the genes that make us the Michael Jordan of basketball, per se. However, I do believe if people are willing to put in time and effort, one can excel where one wants in general. Of course, this belief of mine has been put to the test. I thought if I did everything my research told me to do, in my pursuit of a teaching assistantship at a graduate school, I mean, I thought that would work. That didn't happen. Of course, on the other hand, when I think about it a little bit wider and a little bit deeper, I also think, I spent all this time researching academia, tweaking my creative writing application portfolio, the statement of purpose. That's all time that was lost getting a broader understanding of where it seems like the real champions of free expression are, which I think is largely in social media, maybe even media more broadly. Media is just much more accessible to anyone willing to learn and produce. Graduate school, on the other hand, can tend to come across almost like a sorority or a fraternity, and just seems that it is also exclusive to people who suit the power paradigms which the admissions committees cling to. Now, this is part speculation. I can't actually prove what goes on in the minds of admissions committee members, but I have read interviews in the past in which they concede that they often can't even explain why they choose to admit this person over that person, and say that, on a different day I might have chosen this person instead, which to me, that's indicative of subjectivism. Yes, I do appreciate, of course, by the way, that there is such a thing as skill, and that some people are just better than other people at certain things. Not everyone will necessarily be a graduate school student per se. But I just can't help but think about the degree of exclusiveness and the tens of thousands of dollars you must borrow to have a few people say that they think you're worthy of some creative arts degree, right? I just feel tempted to actually identify this as a scam, a scheme, right? In this world where really anyone can dive into the digital world, study, work, practice, and prove his or her diligence at something, they can do it at a very low cost. So this piece of paper and this endorsement of a particular professor, in my opinion, I just don't see it as quite worth it. And I was inspired more into this chain of thinking when I was watching this particular YouTube video today. The name of the young lady, her name is Vanessa Lau. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Vanessa Lau, Lau. That's her last name. There's a video she published just January. She suggests that using Instagram is like a microblog, and she has this principle: know, like, and trust with respect to how she engages with people on Instagram. And she talks about how not worth it is, right, to have people pay to give you social media likes, views, etc. She talks about the value of establishing real, credible, tangible connections with social media engagements. And what I mean by all of this then, and I've talked about this before, but we just live in this incredibly democratic period. I believe it's somewhat remnant of the 19th century era when Abraham Lincoln did not have to actually go to law school to be president of the United States, not to be a lawyer. Walt Whitman did not have to get an MFA in creative writing to become one of the most famous and revolutionary and important American poets of all time. So there's a sense, right, if you look back at that time period, of this democratic ethos, especially around, I think, it seems to start around the 1830s, when Andrew Jackson was president. While Andrew Jackson was an evil president, he committed genocide, did not really know what he was doing with the banks. Sorry, I'm like very pedantic about these kinds of things. Yeah, I think he's one of the worst presidents we ever had. But he did, for better or for worse, personify a democratic ethos of the time, right? They say he appealed to the everyman. It was the case that just around this time period, the 1830s, most white men, for the first time, had the right to vote. Before that, it was more so rich property owners and that kind of thing. So this new access to voting and political say that is widely offered to this new swath of people, again, not women or African Americans at all. So obviously not a sort of true democratic movement, but a drastic increase in democratic expression, at least at this time. So when you compare this to the internet age, right? Even if now we're watching the internet grow a little bit more, shall we say, colonized, and even though there are these power structures you still have to navigate through, like search engine algorithms and web design sophistication to compete against, if you can get an internet connection, you can get a Facebook account. And if you can present yourself effectively enough, who knows how much influence you just might have. So in that context, as opposed to jumping the hurdles of $20,000 plus in debt, the opinions of your professors and the politics of who knows who to do a favor for who gets a book deal or gets this job, etc., etc., if you can cultivate strong social skills, then all that other stuff that you're going out of your way for, the severe investment of your time and money and arguably social conformity, it's like a bunch of BS it comes across as, right? Yes, I realize I myself need to cultivate social skills, especially on social media. Socializing, I've said it before, but I'd say it again, has always been extremely difficult for me. I'm not the guy who spends night after night at the bar hanging out. I don't really party or go to the club, whatever it is that really social people these days even do. Now, that's not because I'm antisocial. It's not because I'm an isolationist or anything like that. I actually love working. I love the reading that it entails. I love the research, the writing. I love producing stuff. I like the fact that there's connections to be made online. The internet in general is this beautiful universe I love to explore, and I like to surf the web, as the expression goes. But I mean, to like really dig into, if you're gonna Google something, go page after page after page, to see all of the different sites that are out there and all of the things that are published out there, it's just amazing. The point, though, that I'm trying to make is that I sacrifice, I would say, a conventional sense of what it means to be social with trying to be, for lack of better terms, productive. I like to work. So when social life and work can become a combination, can mix, that is really great for me. When I was running for political office, for example, I was extraordinarily social. At the tutoring center where I have a job these days, I love staying late. I love to go to all the parties we have. I love talking with anyone. there and can go on and keep a conversation going as long as there's not a student, or and even when there's a student, navigating in between getting their work done, I can really keep a conversation going, because I'm actually ironically social, but it has to be like in this work setting is just how I tend to operate, it seems. So beyond that then, though, if there's not some sort of work concept going on and it's just a hanging out kind of thing, I just get very frustrated, get very anxious, and don't tend to do it. My bottom line is pretty much what's being done at this point in time to advance my political hopes, what's being done at this point in time to advance my artistic productivity, capture some glimpse of a soul in a meaningful and evocative way. What am I doing to be economical, to market myself somehow? So that's sort of the complexity of my thinking on attempts to sort of be social. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today. Of course, I thank you for your time and want you to have a wonderful day. And I shall chat with you tomorrow. Bye.